case you guys decide to be wild cards, okay? In case you guys decide to be wild cards, the worst is on there, because I know you guys like pain. I know you guys like pain. You're all little pain piggies. I understand. And keep in mind, if there's a tie, voting does get passed over to YouTube and Twitch chat to break the tie. If you would like to participate in the vote, go to riverboat.gg and make an account, and then you can be on site chat, where you can support me even more effectively. But you will have 30 seconds to vote as soon as I press this button. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, democracy. God help us all. Oh my god, you guys are little pain piggies. Florence!
I hope the worst is a Sonic Dreams collection Let's Play.
Oh, Florence, thank you for the $5 dono and your wishful thinking. Oh my god! Are we getting all of them tonight? I genuinely don't know. That's the best part. It's all up to you guys. You have picked the worst option. You fools, you simpletons. And now you must shoulder the load. The ultimate load.
Not only can you take a load, you can take the ultimate load.
You fools. Because now we're doing Jordan Peterson, episode 500, starring the one and only Dave Rubin. That's right, it's an hour and a half long, you fools. Time to ride the dragon of chaos.
You say the truth and nothing else. You'll have an immense adventure as a consequence.
Jordan Peterson said it first.
That's somewhat of an existential crisis.
Oh my god!
For every 5 subs and donos, I will skip 5 minutes of this. Okay? That is your one and only hope to get out of here.
No! God, please, no! 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 No!
For every 5 subs or their dono equivalent, we will skip 5 minutes. That's right.
Get yourself out of trouble, you're gonna come on my podcast. That's the adventure of our life.
I'm gonna put my story on paper.
Life is a constant process of death and rebirth. Why is it a horror show? You're toying with the dark side. Wake up! It's not bravery. I know what to be afraid.
Toying with the dark side, incidentally, is what Jordan Peterson's wife calls pegging. Anyway.
And I'm nowhere near as afraid of the people who would want to compel my language as I am afraid of the consequences of not saying what I have to say.
Do you wrestle with God?
With every word.
Maybe for every 5, I'd be open to it. I'd be open to speeding it up for 10 subs and donos a pop, either speeding it up or slowing it down. Whichever you guys want to do. Yes, this is the man who admitted to dreaming about his grandmother's pubic hair. Yes.
It's a bit of a special occasion today, at least as far as I'm concerned.
Odd Spectre,
and maybe
thank
for
you for
some
subscribing.
Of you. It's the 500th episode of my podcast, and so that's a lot of podcasts. That's a lot of water under the bridge and a lot of learning. And I have as my guest today my friend and compatriot Dave Rubin, and we had the opportunity to take a walk down memory lane. Dave was one of the first podcast notables back in 2016 to bring the concerns that I was...
Oh, you didn't know that and didn't want to know that? Well, unfortunately,
Pardon me,
Unfortunately,
what's
now
the
you
story behind that?
do. Well,
Up yours, woke moralists.
All
We'll
of you-
see who cancels who.
all of you trying to cancel Jordan B. Peterson just because he talked about his grandmother's pubic hair. You know what? Here, I don't remember. I don't remember what it was. Yes. Here it is. I'm posting a segment from Jordan Peterson's Maps of Meaning. So this was written in one of his books. This is one of the many insane things that Peterson says that his fans like to dismiss because they have never read his books. On to Jordan Peterson. I dreamed I saw my maternal grandmother sitting by the bank of a swimming pool, which was also a river. Her genital region was exposed dimly. It had the appearance of a thick mane of hair. She was stroking herself absent-mindedly. She walked over to me with a handful of pubic hair compacted into something resembling a large artist's paintbrush. She pushed this at my face. I raised my arm several times to deflect her hand. Finally, unwilling to hurt her or interfere with her any further, I let her have her way. She stroked my face with the brush gently and said, like a child, "Isn't it soft?" Anyway, did the context make that better or worse? I'm gonna go with worse. But you know what? You guys picked the worst option.
Discussing in Canada to a broader international audience. And out of that initial encounter came a friendship and then a joint tour. I was on tour with Dave throughout 2018. We went to, we can't even remember, 150 different cities, maybe 200. A lot of places.
Oh, also, there's one additional sentence that says right after that, I looked at her ruined face and said, "Yes, Grandma, it's soft." Anyway.
A lot of water under the bridge, and talked to hundreds of thousands of people. And we've both been at the center of the podcast revolution, the new media revolution, the inevitable demise of the legacy media. And we sat down today to remember that and to sort it out and to make sense of it and to be thrilled about it in all sorts of ways. And so join us for an evaluation of the radically strange trip that the last 8 years has been. Well, Mr. Rubin, turns out that you're here for the 500th episode of my podcast.
I don't understand. You're black.
I was told this is the last episode.
Yeah.
Is that?
Well, hopefully not.
Is that not true?
Well, it depends on whether or not the world comes to an end now that Trump's been elected.
I think things are looking up, man. Things are looking really up right
well,
now.
we'll
Had it gone the other way, this might have been the last podcast.
We'll definitely.
What's in the gift bag on the table? That's what I want to know. Is it the pubic hair?
Yeah, definitely. Well, yeah, we'll walk down that avenue, no doubt. So I'm going to give you this book. So this is obviously an unashamed promo, but this is coming out this week. So I'd like you to have it.
I'm thrilled. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
You churn these out like nobody.
Dave is just looking at that being like, I am absolutely not going to read this. You write so many books, don't you? That I'm never going to read.
I mean, you really do.
Yeah, well,
That's
I'm
your
very
wrestling
happy
with
with this
God,
one.
writing these
Yeah.
things, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Are you happy
So
with
that
this
one's
one?
sort of, yes, I'm.
Leftovers use the grandma dream as a soundbite lol.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
It's.
Thank you for the
it's
$10 super
more difficult
chat.
than the last two books that I wrote. It's a little bit more demanding on the reader, I would say, but it's less demanding than Maps of Meaning. So, but I'm very curious to see what sort of impact it has, because now that we know that we see the world through a story, we better get the story straight, and that's what I'm trying to do with this book. And so one of the things I figured out, which I
That's so stupid.
I had to put down my dog today. His name was Oliver and he just turned 14. Here are some pictures. Your streams makes me feel better.
Aw, Smelanie, I'm sorry to hear that. That's really sad. I'm really sorry. That's one of the worst feelings in the world. I had to do that last year. It sucks. Adorable little dog. What a good boy. Thanks for sharing them with us. Appreciate it.
I think is extremely useful to know is that, so once there's converging evidence from multiple disciplines that we see the world through a story, that what a story is actually a description of the way that someone prioritizes their attention and their actions, right? So when you go see a movie, you see the person who's acting, the protagonist, the hero, you see.
Jordan Peterson speaks such nonsense. Like, you could say everything he is saying here with maybe like 3 sentences, but instead he chooses to use, 200. And people think he's brilliant for basically saying what amounts to, hey, you're the shonen protagonist of your own life, and that you construct that narrative. You construct the narrative of your life. Shocker. Yeah, of course. Your experience is subjective to your existence. Wow. You think, therefore you are? That's crazy.
See what he attends to. And so you see how he rank orders his priorities. And then, of course, you see the same thing with regards to his actions. And you infer his frame of reference, and then you can occupy his value frame, and you can see the world through his eyes. And human beings are very good at that. We're very good at seeing the world through other people's eyes. That's even why our eyes have evolved the way they've evolved, because our eyes are maximally visible so that we can see what other people are looking at, so that we can infer what we can infer the value structure that's
I have seen the
directing your attention, and
Jordan
we can occupy
Peterson
the same
diarrhea
emotional
word
and
salad
motivational
website.
space as they do.
They're very funny.
Human beings are unbelievably good at that. And you have
Jordan
to prioritize
Peterson,
your attention.
the original Chat GPT. May the power of the Dono Ghost compel him. BWA.
BWA, thank you so much, GamerG. Also, I just want to say, if you do want this to be a speed up, slow down Dono war, you're more than welcome to do that. But you have to specify it in your donos. And also, if you want it to be a 5-minute skip, you also have to specify that, okay? What does BWA mean? It doesn't mean anything. It's a nonsense term that I made up because it amused me, and because it amused chat, and now it has become an in-joke meme. And it's kind of delightful.
Because there's too many things to attend to. And you prioritize your attention by weighting the things that you interact with. Some things you attend to, some things you don't. That's a 1-0 weighting, essentially. And there's gradations of that weighting. Anyways, the way we communicate about these weighting strategies is with stories.
Boaters with attitude.
So once you know that, the only question becomes, well, what's the story then? What is it? What should it be? Right? And the postmodernist insistence is that the story is one of power. And I don't think that's true, because power is self-devouring. It can't sustain itself, or it can only sustain itself with force. And part of the problem with that is that If you use power, someone more powerful will definitely take you out. And you also don't get the best out of people when you compel them. So they're not efficient strategies. They backfire. And you could say that.
You know, anytime Jordan Peterson is talking about stuff like this, it just makes me want to ask, what's his definition of power here? You know?
Unky Paladin ain't here, so I'll have to
Slowing it down.
SLLLLLWN.
Slowing it down. All right. Actually, I sped it up. There we go. Slowed it down.
There's no story that's canonical, but then you fall into the nihilist hell, and that's not useful. And you could say that the story is one of sexuality and hedonism, but if you orient your life in that direction, you'll end up alone. And so that's another self-devouring story. And so one of the insistences in the biblical narrative is that the fundamental story of the community is one of sacrifice. And I think...
Yeah, but one would argue that if you have the ability to manipulate others to hold on to power, like power is socially derived in a sense. So like the idea that, well, if you rule by power, someone with more power will unseat you. Yeah, but that's true of like anything. There's always going to be someone better than you at anything.
I think...
Oh, to be clear, he's not speaking at 0.5 speed. He's speaking at 0.75 speed. This is only one notch slower. It can go 2 notches slower.
Technically, it has to be true, because to enter into a relationship with someone...
I'm trying to figure out what image is being replicated on his tie, and I can't put it... I can't figure it out.
You have to sacrifice. You sacrifice your own centrality, right? Well, you have kids.
Yeah.
So what's the consequence of that for your story?
Wow, you're going hard right from the beginning.
Dave did not follow a single word that was said to him, and it's so painfully obvious.
Well, first off, I should note that you were integral in me having kids, because we were on tour back in 2008.
What? Okay, I know that this is a dumb conversation for me to get into here. But also, it's kind of insane for Dave Rubin to open this thing by saying, "Hey, Jordan Peterson, you're the reason I have children." What? Wait, Jordan Peterson was in the room? Yeah, he was in the cuck chair.
18, did something like 120 shows, 20 some odd countries, bouncing around. We were just saying right before the cameras started rolling that it was so much smaller. We had no idea what we were doing in some sense. I mean, you knew what you were doing on stage, and I was making some jokes, and we'd do the Q&A together. But there was no security, there was no managers, there was no entourage, there was no film crew. I mean, we really were just out there bouncing around doing things. And one of the things that you were...
Didn't have an entourage. Wow. How small you must have been.
Saying almost every night. And the thing that you know, I've said this to you many times, there's a million things, obviously, that everyone can say about Jordan Peterson, but one of the things that watching you as someone on stage, to the extent that you're a performer, do is that you would basically do an hour and a half lecture every night, and then just pick it up the next night where you left off, except I was basically, me and the tour manager were the only two people that saw it the night before. You know, we didn't have roadies going to every show. But one of the things that you consistently talked about is the need for people to truly, for almost everyone, you would say, to live a fully actualized life is to have a child, to learn what the experience of being a parent is, and then ultimately a grandparent, and maybe a great-grandparent, that's just so integral to being a fully fledged human.
Hello, everybody.
Oh, God, what?
So my wife and I are going back out on tour for my new book, We Who Wrestle with God. I'm going to be walking through
This is so terrible to watch slowed down.
a variety of biblical stories. Now, the postmodern types and the neo-Marxists,
What is that suit? It's a suit. It looks like a suit of chicked tracks, but I know that's not right.
they think the story is one of power, and that is a dangerous story. The fundamental rock upon which true civilization is built is encapsulated in the biblical stories. And so I've spent
I'm sorry. Do you not think that the biblical stories are built on the premise of God? A being from whom and through whom all power is derived according to that scripture? I don't know, just I'm begging young men who are suckered in by this guy to spend like a millisecond thinking about the things he says. Please.
a lot of time trying to understand them, and the point of the tour and the book is to bring whatever understanding I've managed to develop to as wide an audience as possible.
And I'm hearing you do this night after night. And David, my husband, who you know, he's a little younger than me. He grew up in a time where he just thought he was going to get married. It wasn't a...
Okay, can I say something mean and uncharitable? Dave looks like a full 15 years older than his husband. I don't know if that's the case. I have no idea what their actual ages are. I'm just throwing this out there. Dave does not look around the same age as his husband.
thing. I'm a child of the 80s. It was gay marriage and whatever else, and I struggled with all that, and we've done that on camera before, so I don't think we have to rehash that too much. But I grew up in a time not thinking I would get married. I never really thought of anything to the future, really, and I kind of just put everything towards my career.
Why did I forget he's gay? Because Dave Rubin's entire business model relies on his conservative audience forgetting that he's gay. He learned this the hard way, by the way, when he announced that his two kids were born. And conservative audiences started turning on him. He had to do an embarrassing interview with Glenn Beck where he was kowtowing to, you know, basically people hating him for being gay and having kids. Dave really sounds drunk. That's because chat slowed down the video.
Career.
Well, Salmon Moose slowed down the video.
And now I've got David.
If you would like to speed up the video, we only need 10 subs to speed it up.
Who I'm FaceTiming with every night, whatever country.
What's the dollar amount to push this to 1.25?
You know what? Let's put it on screen, okay? All right. Okay. Boo, doo, boo. There we go. Boom. Oh, that's so small. That's so small though. Why is it so tiny? Oh my god. Okay. All right, we're gonna try this in a new format. Just that did not work. Okay, just gonna delete that text field. Make a new one. Boom. There we go. Nailed it. Nailed it. Boom. Boom. We'll make it small. You guys don't need it big. You're not size queens when it comes to this. All right, here we go. Nailed it. Well, you know what? Let's do boom. There we go. Are you team slow or team speed? Charge more to speed it up? Ah, no, that's mean. That's mean. This is a fair and equal contest between teams. All right? Here we go.
Telling me he wants kids, and I've got you on stage telling 10,000 people every night why they should have kids. And finally, I thought, man, if I don't do this, there's really something wrong with me. I'm with the person I'm supposed to be with.
Hey, Archangel.
Touring with someone that I think has offered more to the world in terms of how do we do this right than
$5 equates to a sub.
anyone that I could possibly imagine, and I get the privilege of being part of that. If I can't do this, then this thing's really on me. So we've got two 2-year-olds now, and Justin's middle name is Jordan, which one of the great joys of my life was calling you up that day and asking you if we could do it, and we got the Jordan Peterson tears, which we've gotten every now and again. And so what that has done to me,
they memed his tears. It's honestly crazy. Like, he's really out there being like, yeah, the famous Jordan Peterson crying Riz.
I mean, the best example I can tell you is...
Damn, Dave is 48 and his husband is 47.
Oh God, please make it stop. Speed it to 1.25, please.
All right, well, we got 2 more on the board. Got 3 out of 10 subs to speed. Let's go. Looked it up. Rubin's 40. Okay, it's frankly crazy to me that his husband is only 1 year younger than him and looks so much better and healthier and happier.
Luke was about 2 months old. One night, coughing terribly, really nasal and just
sick babies are so much fun.
But so, a couple hours of trying to get him better and doing everything we could in steam and calling the grandmothers and what do we do? And finally, and calling the doctor, and finally we were like, we have to take him to the hospital.
It is weird that they are both called Dave. That is in fact the weirdest part of their relationship.
And to be driving to that hospital, with him in the car for the first time since we had taken him home from the hospital when he was born, and literally talking to God. I mean, I don't know how often I do that, probably not that often, and saying, take me. Like, it was just the thing, take me. Like, whatever's happening here, I could be done. Like, let me be done. And
Archangel, I'm pausing this just to answer your question. I have assembled a colossal menagerie of brain rot. Metal
Speed
Kitty
up
Mom,
video, please.
thank you for the $25 dono. Adding 5. We are now 2 subs or donos away from speeding up the video. I asked chat if they wanted 3 specific terrible brain rot creators, and they had the option to choose any one of those 3, or an option that I just nebulously titled the worst in all caps. Chat, not even by like 1 or 2 votes, overwhelmingly voted for the worst option. So, don't put this on me. This is on you guys. But I did know what you would do. I know you.
And obviously he's okay, but that's the thing.
Make it faster, end the
I
suffering.
think
Make
in
it
essence
faster, end the
that's
suffering.
the reason
Very well.
that you're saying to
Chats
to
will be
really
done.
do it right. I mean, I've changed more in these 2 years and matured more and dealt with more of my stuff, whatever else was left, than it certainly at any point in my adult life.
All right, we have 2
and
subs
I'm just at
for
the beginning
speed.
of that. You know, I'm also 48. I have a lot of friends who have children that are mid-20s now.
Yeah.
So think about that. My contemporaries, you know, I'm hanging out with my friends from childhood. Two of my best friends are still from 5 and 8 years old. They've got kids out of college now. And I'm just bringing these children into the world and what that does to your perspective and change and everything else. So I would say the most powerful piece of it probably is there is
You were
something
manipulating chat.
way more important than you.
Was I manipulating chat when I made it abundantly clear how awful this option would be? I did really emphasize that this would be the worst one.
And when you wake up and see that, when I get up every morning and I'm making my coffee and those 2 kids run at me with like the world is just, you talk about the eyes, like their eyes are open, man. And like, they think
like
They're tripping balls.
they think you are the best thing in the world. And I think about it all the time. I'm like, well, now it's on me to be the best thing that I can be. I don't know that I can be the best thing in the world, but I could be the best thing that I can be. And I'm really trying to do it. And actually, as I've tried to do it, it's becoming less difficult to do. You know, like eventually you start doing it right and then it kind of works. I'm not saying it's perfect
well, you
all the
become
time.
what you practice.
Yeah. And then
what you
it's
aim
on you.
for.
Yeah. And aiming for that. I didn't realize I was aiming for it, I think.
For what do you think now? Well, you said.
Well, I don't think I realized I was aiming for something bigger than myself in some sense. You know, that it was just, I was going to, my career started working around the time that we were on tour, you know, 6 or so years ago, which feels like a lifetime ago. I just thought, I'll just do this and it's working and it's good. And that can really fill you up.
Yeah.
You know, you had this conversation on Bill Maher's podcast about that, that there are some people that maybe can do it. Maybe you don't have to get married and maybe you don't have to have kids and maybe you can put it all into your career or your art, but it's pretty damn rare. And I thought
even then you get one-dimensional.
Isn't Jordan P. Peterson a homophobe? Yes, he is. He posted a video in 2018 titled "Thoughts on Gay People Raising Children" and said, I think the devil's in the details, to tell you the truth. And he did eventually say it was okay-ish if gay people raised kids, but only if, and I'm quoting here from that now scrubbed video directly because other people were kind enough to transcribe bits of it, if the gay couple accept the fact that it's necessary for kids to have models of both sexes, and that they believe with all their heart that the sexes are different, and that they have a responsibility upon them to basically provide a model of the classic male-female relationship. Yeah. Which is homophobic, just to be clear.
Oh, man.
Well, you guys, I thought you took that conversation to as close as it could get on camera, probably without going any further with him. And I think, and we don't have to talk about him too much, but I think he's.
You know what? Here's a video.
Voted up.
Here's a video for you. Mirrored, by the way, because I believe the original is scrubbed.
77 votes. Australia is holding a plebiscite on whether to legalize gay marriage. I'm against the Yes campaign, but only because it's backed by cultural Marxists. I'm curious to hear your views on gay marriage. Well, I would be against it too if it was backed by cultural Marxists, because it isn't clear.
I would be against gay marriage, not because gay marriage is bad, but if the cultural Marxists wanted it. What the fuck is a cultural Marxist? It's a dog whistle. It's a dog whistle. There's an audiobook read by Jordan. Yes, Grandma. Yeah. But cultural Marxism is essentially a Nazi term. It's a Nazi term. It originated in Nazi Germany. Basically, in Nazi Germany, it was called like Jewish Bolshevism. The idea that Jews and communists were infiltrating Germany to degrade the state and destroy German identity in order to take over the country. And Jordan Peterson has rehabilitated this term quite extensively in his work as cultural Marxism. And so when someone writes in and asks, I oppose cultural Marxism, and it's, gay marriage is being pushed by them, and I'm not a homophobic bigot. I just am opposing the cultural Marxists. Well, they're saying that gay people are agents of cultural Marxism that are degenerating society. That's what that means.
Clear to me that it will satisfy the ever-increasing, what would you call it, demand for an assault on traditional modes of being. Now, with regards to gay marriage specifically, that's a really tough one for me because...
Is it, though? Is it a tough question?
I can imagine... I can't do anything really other than spout platitudes about it, I suppose, unfortunately.
I don't know. You could just say, yeah, it's fine. It doesn't hurt anybody. If they're both consenting adults, go for it. Knock yourself out, kids. You could do that. But you don't. Because you don't think gay people should get married.
If the marital vows are taken seriously, then it seems to me that it's a means whereby gay people can be integrated more thoroughly into standard society, and that's...
Assuming, of course, that those degenerate gays can take their marriage vows seriously. Fuck off, man. Sincerely.
Probably a good thing. And maybe that would decrease promiscuity, which is a public health problem, although obviously that's not limited to gay people. Although gay men tend to be more promiscuous than average, probably because there's no women to bind them with regards to their sexual activity. The problem is that it does seem to me to be part of a wedge, and it isn't obvious to me that legalizing gay marriage has done anything to decrease the demands that the radical left neo-Marxist types are placing on traditional society. So
it's bad then?
Those are my views. I know they're confused, because I'm in favor of extending the bounds of traditional relationships to people who wouldn't be involved in a traditional long-term relationship, but I'm concerned about the undermining of traditional modes of being, including marriage, which...
Why would gay people getting married impede straight people from getting married at all? If they're gay, they're not getting straight married for the most part. If they're gay, they don't want to be in the straight marriages, in which case they should get a divorce and then settle down with a nice gay person who likes them, because they're also gay. This isn't rocket science. Jordan Peterson, is this a punishment? I would say yes. Except that chat voted for this. This is democracy. working as intended. I need the "This is Democracy Made" manifest on my soundboard, and I don't have it, and that's very disappointing to me. But that's probably not because it's not on the Discord. It's just that I haven't been home to do Discord things in like a month.
You know, has technically and historically been a union between a man and a woman, fundamentally for the purpose of raising children in a stable and an optimal and stable environment. So, and marriage has already taken a fair bit of damage over the last few decades. You know, poor people are increasingly less likely to be married, and that's really not good for them as far as I'm concerned.
Jordan Peterson, ultimate poor person understander. Let's go.
Maybe as close as you can get to doing that, for better or worse.
I wonder if Dave Rubin at any point in this conversation is going to ask him about his views on gay marriage. I would love to see Jordan Peterson to Dave Rubin give that same waffle and see Dave Rubin try to wiggle around. I want Dave Rubin to ask Jordan Peterson if he would bake him a cake for his gay wedding. I want to see that so badly. It's not going to happen, but I do want to see that.
Remember when checking Twitter was the first thing you did every morning?
Oh my God,
eager to see what President Trump had shared overnight? Relive the phenomenon that reshaped presidential communication and captivated a nation with the collected poems of Donald J. Trump. Meticulously compiled from the president's most prolific period, this collection transformed Trump's memorable tweets into poetic form. Head over to dailywire.com/shop today.
Did I just hallucinate that? Did I just hallucinate that the Daily Wire is trying to sell Donald Trump's tweets transformed into haikus or some shit? I'm sorry. I'm sorry, what? What the fuck is this merch website? What is this? Am I Racist the Game? Weirdly sexy Santa. Okay, into children's underwear. Into Jordan Peterson. What kind of a lineup is that? Think of the children. Think of what the children might think if they are perusing the Daily Wire website and they're behind Dad and they see this hot, strapping man. Daily Wire, you're turning the kids gay. This is crazy. Oh, good. They turned the Michael Knowles show Yes or No game into a board game. You know, because you've always needed a board game to ask your friends and family yes or no questions. You know, this is a niche interest of mine. I really like board games, okay? I really like board games. And I am just baffled by this.
You did say this was the worst.
This is the worst. You know what a bad board game is? Yes or no questions. That's a bad board game. Okay, I'm gonna continue to scroll here. The Matt Walsh collection.
Am I racist? Game is just a deck of cards that all have the word "yep" printed on them. BWA.
Very Knifey Duck, thank you for the $5 dono. Lady Rinklin, thank you for the $5 dono. I did say this was the worst. Oh, good. There's the Matt Walsh Superfan bundle. My pronouns are chef self. Leftist Tears mug. Am I Racist the board game? What is a Woman the book? And Johnny the Walrus book. Wowee. I'm sorry, there's a Ben Shapiro superfan. Kindly go fact yourself. A facts button. And what appears to be a candle that smells like Winston Churchill. What is this? And how is it so lame? No, Archangel. They only have the finest quality merchandise. Clearly, these candles are made of the corpse wax from Winston Churchill. They're made out of his corpse wax. They literally smell like him. Oh, God. I can't get over the go fact yourself. Where's the Matt Walsh baby? They stopped selling it. They stopped selling it because they were embarrassed by people making fun of them on social media. All right, let's continue our scroll down. Ah, the Michael Knowles collection. I was wondering if we would see one. But he doesn't have his own bundle of merchandise. He just has 2 full-priced expansions for his game that I need to remind you revolves around yes or no questions. There was such demand for this game that you needed 2 expansions for yes or no questions. This is like having the board game version of Never Have I Ever. You don't need the board game. I'm so mad right now. I am not play it on stream. Hey chat, yes or no? Do you like macaroni and cheese? Yes? No? 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 Okay, look, we're playing it right now. Are we having fun yet? Also, a lot of you are saying no, and that baffles me. But okay. What's the replayability of this game? Who can say? Who can say? This is hitting me in a way I did not know I could hurt. All right, the smells like victory Winston Churchill candle. Also, can I just say one thing about the advertising of this goddamn candle? Can I just say one thing about this? Why is the Declaration of Independence and the Stars and Stripes all around a fucking Winston Churchill candle? Wrong country, assholes! God damn it. Oh, fragrance, notes, and strength. Cedarwood, vanilla, smooth musk. Cold throw, intensity when unlit, moderate, hot throw, intensity when lit. Top, oh my god. All right. Oh, good. Michael Knowles has the Old Soul candle. So you can smell like the most insufferable man that has ever hit on you. Good stuff on the Daily Wire website. Ah, Jeremy Boring. Sorry. I didn't realize that this was supposed to be an S. Because why the fuck would this be an S? Why would this be an S? Why? It doesn't look like one at all. Stop giving your money to woke corporations that hate you and give your money to a corporation that just blatantly hates you. So refreshing. The women's deluxe bundle. Good. It's the second gen Jeremy's razors. Because the first gen kept, like, cutting people repeatedly because they were cheap razors off of Temu, is my understanding. Anyway. The Brett Cooper collection. Finally, you can smell Ben Shapiro's girl smell. Let's see, we've got... BCX comment section hat. Dad hat. What? Also, little bit of constructive feedback on the Brett Cooper merch. BC does not stand for what you think it stands for on the internet. That is an acronym that is already taken prolifically by the porn industry. Okay? You are not cornering the market on BC merch. Just really hammering that home. The only bit of constructive feedback that I'm going to give the Daily Wire team, maybe have a little bit of rebranding going on here, okay?
I've been told I'm intense when lit. Also a point for faster, whenever we get back on the road.
Oh, okay.
Speed limits are for losers.
True. I'll throw it on there. Thank you for continuing the fight against normalized speeds. Does it stand for butt cum? No, big cocks. Or black cocks. It's one of those two. Look, I've been on Pornhub. I know. I'm an adult. You're missing a B then? Anyway. You have this very ugly hat. Or you have this shirt that apparently shows Brett Cooper shooting the comment section on any one of her videos, and God, if only. And, oh, well, a poster personally autographed by Brett Cooper. Ooh la la. The Borden Peterson collection, which is just, oh, you can get a lobster tie. At least that is mildly funny, and it comes with a pocket square. It's $100! Never mind! Fuck off! Oh my god. I was like, well, this is the one piece of merchandise that I don't immediately hate on sight. It is more money than God. Okay. Cool. Oh, good. I thought they were gonna forget Andrew Clavin. Or as the graphic design on his name would suggest, Andrew Clavin. Clavin. I feel like you have to really emphasize the la part, but it's hard in that name. Oh, good. What we've always wanted. A bunch of his terrible murder mysteries? Question mark? He does have a shirt. Wait, he wrote a book called Werewolf Cop? Wait, is this... I'm sorry. Okay. Not related to Wolf Cop. Thank God. Okay. For a second there, I thought Werewolf Cop was the premise of Wolf Cop. Don't think it is. Okay. Thank God. Wolf Cop is nice. Sorry, I do owe it to you guys to read off the description of this book. Zach Adams is one of the best detectives in the country. Nicknamed Cowboy, he's a soft-spoken homicide detective known for his integrity and courage under fire. He serves on a federal task force that has a single mission: to hunt down Dominic Abend, a European gangster who's taken over the American underworld. After a brutal murder gives them a lead, Zach and his tough guy NYPD partner, Martin Goulart, are finally on Abend's trail. But things get complicated and very, very weird. Goulart's on-the-job enemies are accusing him of corruption, and Zach is beginning to suspect that Abend's evil goes beyond crime, perhaps to the edge of the supernatural. As his investigation continues in Germany, Zach finds himself lured into the impossible. In a centuries-old forest under a full moon, a beast assaults him, cursing him forever. In the aftermath, Zach is transformed into something horrible, something deadly. Now, oh man, this is embarrassing. They don't have a space between this period and the first letter of the next sentence. You're trying to advertise a book here, friends. Anyway, now the good cop has innocent blood on his hands. Wow, I'm sure that's never happened to a cop before. He has killed and will kill again in the form of a beast who can't be controlled or stopped. Kind of like a lot of cops in America, so it's really a lateral move. Before he can free himself, is he going to have to solve the greatest mystery of all? How can you defeat evil when evil is inside you? And it's not through body cameras. Am I screaming into the void right now? Yes. Werewolf Cop. Cool stuff. Anyway. Oh, and good, we get the Bentkey collection. Look at all of their wonderful children merchandise. Look at their favorite unplayed with toys in pristine condition. Chipzilla. Or, sorry, Chipchilla. Chipzilla would be a much better concept. Cool. Knockoff Bluey. Looking like it has knockoff merchandise. I'm not surprised. Wonderful Day with Mabel McClay. Wow. Just what your child has always wanted. A weird human plush. Cool stuff. Anyway, as you scroll down from this children's book and horrible, malformed human stuffy, look at Jeremy's razors, smoking cigars and drinking whiskey. Cool stuff. Do we have more? And become a DW Plus member. Join the Candle Club. Boy, howdy. Can I smell what Jordan Peterson smells like? Got Winston Churchill. We got black and white facts. Oh, good. Now that you've said it, a Chipzilla show.
Now that you've said it, a Chipzilla show is all that I want from the Daily Wire.
You're never getting anything you want from the Daily Wire. Are you kidding me? Oh, a butterscotch bourbon candle from Ben Shapiro. Palo Santo and cashmere. My God. Comment section with Brett Cooper candles. Cool. I've really been sidetracked here, but I just really want to emphasize how much I hate all of this. So much. Also, sorry, I just realized that each of these candles under normal pricing conditions is $60. Each one of these is $60. They are 3 times the cost of larger candles you can get from, like, Yankee Candle. Are you kidding me? Some of these look tiny as hell. Good golly. Robbing you blind for candles. Yeah, what a steal. No, really, they're robbing people. All right, anyway. Wait a minute. We didn't find what we were looking for. I'm sorry. dailywire.com/shop. We were looking, I forgot, we were looking for the Trump book. Okay. Books. Product. I can filter by product type, which, thanks, books. More filters. Donald Trump. Nonfiction. Oh, good. In 50 years, we will all be chicks by Adam Carolla. Who knew that Adam Carolla was the one transing all of us? Okay, so none of these are the Trump book. Trump poetry. Maybe just Trump? Huh. Bold of them to advertise a product that they don't actually have on their website. Collected poem. Okay, you know what? I'm just gonna Google the collected poems of Donald Trump. Okay, this came up. Oh, good. Good. 2 men have a booth set up at the Republican National Convention selling a 300-page hardcover green-bound book featuring former President Donald Trump's tweets, or The Great Work, the collected poems of Donald J. Trump, as they call it. Each page features a singular post from Twitter. For example, page 270 features one of Trump's most minimal works, the word "we."
Objectively, me becoming a chick in 50 years would be extremely impressive.
Oh, good. Are you fucking kidding me? I'm sorry. What is this, a poem for ants? I really want to make this bigger on my screen, and yet it is only getting smaller. There we go. No! Damn it. God damn it. God damn it. All right, whatever. I'll just read it out to you. Okay. Christmas is over now. We can all get back to the wars of life. Focus. 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 Never accept defeat. Push hard for total victory. I try to learn from the past, but I plan for the future by focusing exclusively on the present. That's where the fun is. So they have literally taken his tweets and spaced them creatively as poems. Cool.
I don't even mean that as a
Well,
judgment
you see,
call.
you made a observation about the sacrificial element, telling that story about taking your son to the hospital, right? So your fervent wish was, if you could swap places and take on the trouble, you'd do that in a second, right? So
it wasn't even a choice. It
Right,
wasn't a
right,
thought. It was
right.
just that was it, obviously.
Right. Well, this is why I've said this, and it's made me unpopular, that people don't mature generally until they have a child. And the reason for that is you're not mature until someone's more important than you. And it has to be like that. It's like, there's no question. Right. There's no question. And it's weird, because so one of the things that psychologists discovered kind of by accident using statistical investigation, so I think this is a very robust finding, is that all the negative emotion words clump together. So there's really one tree of negative emotion with the central trunk, right? So the negative emotions are grief and disappointment, frustration and anxiety and pain. Those are the big ones. Maybe they branch off into more differentiated emotions. One of the experiences that's integrally linked with negative emotion is self-consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Self-consciousness is so tightly associated with negative emotion that they're not statistically distinguishable. There's no difference between being concerned with yourself and suffering. And that's such an interesting, it's such an unlikely reality that that's the case, because the hedonistic story is that you can please yourself, and that why shouldn't you please yourself? And,
fill it up forever.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the answer to that seems to be, well, first of all, who are you going to do that with? That's a real problem. It's a real problem,
Right.
Unless you can please yourself, and no one can. We can punish the worst criminals by putting them in solitary. That's how social human beings are. And then even more directly, the experience of self-consciousness, so to be concerned with yourself, is associated with anxiety and shame and grief and disappointment and all the negative emotions. And so that implies then that there's a non-obvious relationship between being focused on, now exactly what? Focused on others? That's part of it. Focused on something higher? It's certainly not.
One can be self-conscious and still care about things outside the self. This is not. You can walk and chew bubblegum at the same time, my guy. Goodness.
Not the narrow self, and it's certainly not the whims of the self.
It's building something that's well beyond you. The best I ever heard you talk about it was the closing speech you gave in ARC, which I think for the 100 some odd events we've done together, could be almost 200 events we've done at this point.
Like what he is trying to sell you on here is the idea that being self-conscious is a negative emotion, which, yeah, it is. It's a feeling of anxiety. It's a fear. But you can have that fear.
Now wait a minute, Jordan. What if I take pleasure in the company of others? Then I don't have to be alone.
True, Jimmy Smith. Thank you for the $5 super chat. But like, even if you have that fear, you can still care about others. You can deal with that. And you know what? I speak from a position of authority on this. I have a generalized anxiety disorder. And I'm extremely self-conscious in a lot of social situations. It is a fear. But that doesn't mean that I am locked off from other aspects of my life. It doesn't mean that I'm locked off from caring about other people or prioritizing other people at all. This seems like a weird argument for him to make. These things are not mutually exclusive.
Where you talked about building Jacob's ladder and why you do it and what that is and how that is the link from man to God.
Yeah, so
that is right. That I know
you think
that
right?
is right.
You know
Yes,
that's right.
I know
Why do
that's
you know
right.
it?
Because it's not just that suddenly you have this magical moment of I'm driving to the hospital, take me, right? I just met this kid, right? He doesn't speak yet. I just met him, take me. I can tell you in the other parts of my life, I'm in better shape now in these last 2 years because I thought, well, now I have to live longer. I actually have to live longer.
Right.
And I play basketball every week with a bunch of guys who are
Good night,
also
Sarah
have
Shock.
kids that are, in their 20s and 30s. And then sometimes they bring their kids that are in 20s and 30s. So I'm talking about guys in their 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
And I started playing with them and I was like, wait a minute, I want to be able to play with my sons when they're 18. Well, if they're going to be 18, that's 16 years on me now. I got to be able to play when I'm 64. So then I started eating right and getting better and working out more and all of these things. And then and that sounds like it's all about me, except when you start doing those things, David started doing those things. And then you've been to our house. We keep our house in a certain order and welcome people and share in the goodness that I suppose my career has been able to afford. So then you start building.
Oh man, even in this scenario, Dave Rubin can't help but brag about how much money he has.
Something that
And I want and people could partake in the magnificent bounty that my career has generated, I suppose. How high are you getting on your farts there, Dave?
well, my hands just went like that. You start building something that goes up. And I think that that's real and tangible, and we all innately know it.
I've been speaking with Jonathan Pajot about these sorts of things quite a lot too. And so in this book, one of the stories that I tell or that I investigate, let's say, is the story of Abraham. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about that because once you understand it, you never forget it. It's absolutely striking. So we talked about Jacob's ladder a little bit. So you think that there's this upward spiraling process that brings you to, what would you say, to more and more sophisticated plateaus of unity, something like that. Okay, so that's what the Abraham story is about. So and there's a pact made. This is the covenant between Abraham and God. So whatever's at that pinnacle of this ever ascending, spiraling value structure and process, that's God, whatever's at the pinnacle, and it recedes as you approach it. So there's no final definition. God is ineffable in that way, right? So there's a never-ending spiral of up, just like there's a never-ending spiral of down. And so when the story opens, Abraham is a privileged infant, essentially. He's 70 years old, but he's never really had to lift a finger because he's wealthy. And so he has privilege in the modern language. And God comes to him as the spirit of adventure. And this is a definition of
If you're 70 years old in that time period, the idea that he never had to lift a finger and is comparable to a child as a 70-year-old man, how on earth are we supposed to relate to that? How on earth are we in the modern day supposed to be like, ah, yes, a 70-year-old man has had to work so little that he's basically a child? How are we supposed to relate to that? I mean, where on earth could we find real examples of that today? Surely Jordan Peterson would call that out if he knew of anyone like that, right? Am I talking about Donald Trump? Am I talking about Elon Musk? Who could it be? Who could say? The shoe fits?
Of one of the facets of the highest plane of being, let's say, and God makes Abraham a deal, which is the covenant. And so the covenant is a contract. And so one of the proclamations of the biblical text is that human beings exist in a contractual relationship with the divine. That's a very interesting claim. And we exist in contractual relationships with each other. That's what a marriage is, obviously, and all of our business arrangements and friendships, although the details of the contract and the friendship are implicit, but they're still there. It's an understanding. So our...
Is it, though? Like I'm sorry, you can't say like, ah, yes, there are explicit, we all exist in contract with one another. You know, the friendships are a contract. As soon as you've been friendly to someone, you've effectively signed an ineffable contract between you and that other party. That being a friend is a contract. It's like, no. Actually. Society relies on communal agreement on different aspects of life. But those agreements are not contracts. They are not as firm as contracts, but in some cases they might be stronger than contractual agreement. I would for one say that love transcends contractual agreement. But, you know, that's just me. Maybe Jordan Peterson needs contracts to keep those he loves bound to him.
Essential mode of the being in the world is contractual. And so God's contract with Abraham takes a very specific form. He says to Abraham, it's very well defined. He says to Abraham, if you leave your zone of comfort and you go out into the world and you put your heart...
Yeah, does Coconut Island have a contractual agreement with the person stranded on it? That's my question. Or is it just implied? Is it an implied contract between the stranded passenger jet? You know, passenger? Like, is there a contractual agreement between them and the island? I wonder.
Heart into it. This is what I can offer. You'll be a blessing to yourself. So that's a good deal, right? Because part of the reason that people suffer is because they're racked with self-doubt and guilt and lack of faith in themselves, whether that's deserved or undeserved. And sometimes it's undeserved and sometimes it's deserved, but they're not a blessing to themselves. They suffer more in consequence of their own being than for any other reason. Okay, so if you...
Question, are we at normal speed now? Answer, yes, we are.
Abide by the voice of adventure, then that disappears. Okay, so that's a good deal.
3, 4.
And
then can go 4 notches
the next
faster.
Part of the deal is you'll do that in a manner that will bring you renown among other people, and it'll be justified. So that's a good deal. So that's basically reputation, right? It's not fame, it's reputation. Those are different.
No, they're not. They're not. Fame is a type of reputation.
Fame. You can attain fame by being disreputable, right?
Yes. But then it's called infamy. You dipshit. You marble-brained buffoon.
And you can have a great reputation without being famous. So they're not exactly this.
But that great reputation is how you are famed. You can be defamed even if you're not famous.
Same.
Right. And those are very, very different things.
They are.
Yeah.
And the reputation, it's also the case.
All I can think of in this exchange at this moment is... Sorry. Is this scene?
Telegram for the three amigos.
Just gonna play this.
Amigos, Hollywood, California. You are very great. 100,000 pesos to come to Santa Poco, put on show stop. The infamous El Guapo.
What does that mean, infamous?
Oh, Dusty. Infamous is when you're more than famous. This man, El Guapo, is not just famous, he's infamous.
100,000 pesos to do a
Okay.
personal appearance with this guy El Guapo, who is probably the biggest actor to ever come out of Mexico.
Wow, the infamous? Infamous?
All right. Anyway, all right. That entire bit is all I can think of as they're talking about this.
That the kingdom of heaven that Christ tells people to store treasure in is a reputational storehouse. So the gospel injunction basically is that the safest place to store value is in reputation. And that makes perfect sense to me. I think that's exactly right.
No. What on earth?
For value house. So the gospel injunction basically is that the safest place to store value is in reputation. And
no, the gospel is about building up trust, like your position in God's eyes. Why? Like you are saying simple ideas with like 12 different sentences and still somehow getting it wrong.
And that makes perfect sense to me. I think that's exactly right. So, okay, so the second part of the covenant is...
That was funny. What's it from? It's from the Three Amigos.
You'll make a name among other people and it'll be justified. So that's a good...
Which is a pretty funny movie. Not gonna lie. Steve Martin, Chevy Chase, that other guy, Martin Short.
Deal. And the third part is you'll establish something permanent, a dynasty, right? So that's what makes Abraham the father of nations. So now there's a new idea.
I don't know, though. There are a few nations that Abraham isn't the father of. We need to get Maury Povich on this case.
That enters into that. So the idea is that the pattern of following the spirit of adventure is the same pattern that makes for the best fatherly motive.
It's all right if you like white saviors. Yeah, that's like every movie made in like the 1990s, 80s, 70s, 60s, etc.
Being, and
frankly, a lot of the movies still made today, unfortunately.
That has a multi-generational effect. And so that if you embody the father properly, you radically increase the probability of the paternal success of your children. And I think that's true. I think that's right. So I was thinking about this in relationship to Dawkins' theory of the selfish gene. It's like, the implication of the selfish gene is that reproduction takes primacy and that there's no difference between reproduction and sex. But that's not true. There's a big difference between reproduction and sex, especially among human beings, because we're high investment parents, right? It isn't just sex and the offspring runs off into the world. It's a multi-generational investment. That's why we live as long as we do, because it's a grandparental investment as well as a parental investment. So
it's not though. Like, thinking of it in investment terms, like I'm sorry, thinking of having children in investment terms is really weird. My child portfolio is finally paying off. What are you fucking talking about? What are you fucking talking about? Jack, it kind of is. It kind of is what? Before modern times, children were absolutely an investment. True, but that's why you'd have a bajillion of them. But, you know, before modern times, owning people was also an investment. Before modern times, you know, doing chattel slavery was a great investment. It was a great path to making a lot of money. It's not a good thing to do. It's not a good thing to treat your children as property. It's not a good thing to treat your child like a 401k. That's the point I'm trying to make. If you're viewing your child as an investment rather than a person, that's a big problem.
So imagine that to maximize the reproductive success of your offspring, you have to instantiate the pattern of the father. And that's the divine pattern of the father, right? And so...
Actually, slavery was poor. That's why the South was poor and the North had more money and more wealth. Slavery was poor per capita because slaves didn't own property. The plantation owners of the South were ridiculously wealthy. There's a reason the transatlantic slave trade existed. Guys, hey, what if I could come up with a company where you didn't have to pay your workers anything? You didn't have to pay your workers anything. Now, I ask you, what company wouldn't jump at that chance? I'm sorry. Do you think if you can cut all wages to your employees and still have them do work, do you think that that would make a company more money? Chat, I'm just asking. If you could cut all wages to your employees, would you make more money if they were still forced to do all the work they did? Would you make more money? It's a yes/no question. Just wondering how many of you are up on this. Who would your customers be then? Other people who own the slaves, obviously. Only 1% of Americans ever own slaves. Does that include the slaves in the equation? Just out of curiosity. Let's see. Metal Kitty Mom, thank you for resubscribing. I appreciate it. Let's see here. This is an interesting thing that seems to fact check what you are putting out there. Comes from Duke University. Let's take a look, shall we? Okay. One of the consistent arguments against reparations is that there were actually not very many white slave owners in the U.S. Recently, reparations activist and Duke professor William Sandy Darity disputed this on Twitter. He posted, "One lie circulating is that only 1% of white Southerners owned slaves. In 1860, 1% of white Southern families owned 200 or more human beings, but in states of the Confederacy, at least 20% owned at least one. And in some states, like South Carolina, it ran as high as 50%. Interesting stuff. Wowee. I don't know. Maybe you should know what the fuck you're talking about. The top 1% of white plantation owners owned more than 200 slaves. But a lot of white families owned a slave. Oh, okay. Here's PBS. Freedom and Bondage in the Colonial Era. Let's see. Though only 25%, a quarter, 1 in 4, owned slaves. And that was during the colonial era. That was not at the height of slavery in the United States. That was at the beginning of the United States. And we had a very small amount of people living here. Hey, question, if 25% of the population of the entire country owned slaves, and then you fast forward 100 years and the rate of slave ownership is still that high or higher, are more or less people enslaved? Oh, well, back then there was a small amount of people living here. Well then I guess you'll have to explain how millions of Africans were stolen and brought here and sold here and bought here. What matters is that we got rid of it, and other countries in the world still have it. We still have it, motherfucker! The Constitution, the constitutional amendment that ended slavery has a fucking loophole for prisoners, motherfucker. That's why California is able to pay less than $1 for prisoners to go and fight fires and put their lives on the line. Don't do crime? Okay, wait. Then don't claim we don't have it here. You made a claim. Your claim was wrong. Like, you've actually made multiple claims, and each one of those claims has been wrong. How about you don't take this air of moral superiority when every single thing you've said in chat has been wrong? It's not slavery to serve your sentence? I'm sorry. So slavery is fine if the state does it. Like, if the country owns slaves, that's fine. It's just private ownership of slaves is bad. Huh. Interesting stuff. It's just people paying for their crime? Yeah, that's called indentured servitude. It's a form of slavery. That was also outlawed, by the way. You can't privately be an indentured servant in the United States. That's not what entered servitude is. You don't even know what I'm talking about well enough to spell what I just said. Like, how old are you? Are you like 15? Is that like the first time you've heard that word said out loud? You're using voice text? Oh, well, how about you use your fingers like an actual human being? How about you actually learn how to type if you're going to try and argue on the internet? Indentured servitude just means you owed a debt and you had to work until you paid it off. You know, you're using a past tense there, but it's a form of slavery. You can try and rationalize it all you want, but, you know, I can't help but notice that when I brought up that they had a loophole for prisoners to be enslaved, you were like, well, just don't do crimes, lol. I get the feeling you're not actually serious about this conversation and don't actually give a single fuck about it. And, I don't know. I think you're not a serious person. I don't think you're actually engaging with these ideas seriously. I don't agree that it's slavery to pay for your crime. Well, you know, a lot of slave owners also used the debt argument to justify owning slaves when slavery was legal for private ownership. So you're just using the exact same line of arguments that a slave owner in the 1870s or 1860s would have used. It's a nice pivot, but no, actually. It's not a pivot. We're talking about the same topic. You're really bad at debating, Kung Fu Joe. Bad arguments is why you guys lost? No, dude. If you were in a college classroom, your professor would laugh you out of the room. Your professor would tell every other student in your class to point at you and laugh until you died of shame. This is already too easy for me. You've already lost, man. You're like smugly sitting in pants filled with your own shit, thinking that you owned the libs here. That's you right now. Huh. Got him. Keep coping, man. I just corrected wrong facts. You were wrong about literally every part of every single thing you said in my chat. There wasn't a single thing that you said that was correct. And you misspelled your arguments. Like, not only were you incorrect, you were also grammatically incorrect. You just don't like that people are working to pay for their crimes, and that's fine. It's slavery, man. Hey, guess what? Did you know that sometimes slaves on the plantations were given, like, tiny bits of wages? Did you know sometimes they were given bonuses? Did you know sometimes they were also paid in a way? I knew that. Oh, well then they were just working. They were just normal. They were just being paid normal wages. Slavery was never real, according to your argument. Wild. I took 2 semesters of American history in high school? Or are we talking middle school? What level are you operating on? Oh, in college. Oh, ooh la la, you took 2 whole semesters. What, did you get your minor? Did you get your minor in American history? How many did you take? More than you, it turns out. And got straight Fs. Why is your history so wrong? It's not. I've literally corrected every single thing you said. You're just doing the classic bit of, you know, slavery was dying out because of the cotton gin. The classic conservative defense of slavery. Anyway, do you have a more interesting argument, or are you going to be banned now? Like, you need to actually present an argument here. I'm going to give you, like, I don't know, a minute. Start the clock. May I? In a minute, if they haven't posted an argument. There's not a single argument I could give you.
To the person arguing with Jack in the chat, were those 2 semesters of American history at Liberty University by any chance?
One of the most depressing things I saw on election night. If we're so poorly educated, then why is he winning? Just wow, yeah. There's not a single argument I could give you that would keep you from doing what you've already made up your mind. That would keep me from doing what? Like, you could actually engage with the argument. You came in, you said only 1% of slave owner, of white people in the South owned slaves. And then you weren't able to back that up at all. You immediately retreated off of that. And then you just kept retreating from different arguments. And then after you retreated from every single one of them, you said, I've been right on everything. Nah, dude, you didn't argue. You posted a statement that was immediately disproven by multiple sources. Crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. Like, I don't know. Maybe provide an argument. Saying something untrue isn't an argument.
Every person who has went to college at an accredited university has taken 2 semesters of history. What is this guy proud of?
Yeah, it's almost like that's a requirement to graduate with your bachelor's.
Privatized prisons would technically mean we still have privatized slavery.
True, Caracal.
From Caracal.
True. It is very funny to me that essentially this guy did the equivalent of coming into chat and saying, the moon is actually purple. And then when we're like, wait, the moon isn't purple, it's like a gray color. They went, well, it's kind of a different thing altogether, isn't it? It's like, no, you were just wrong. Take the L. Take the L. I don't know, when someone says something wrong, that's not an argument. That's just being wrong. Also, by their logic, there's nothing wrong with having people work to pay off their crimes. And, you know, for a lot of people in the South, being black and free was a crime. They were just working to pay it off. Education in the USA has really fallen off. I don't think we can put that one on education. That one was squarely on a dumbass. Anyway, we're really having a lively one here, chat. If you are enjoying stream, we've been going for about 2 hours now. Please hit the follow button on Twitch, hit the subscribe button on YouTube, like the goddamn YouTube stream, and consider dropping those sweet, sweet subs and donos, folks. Let's get back on the road. We're only 23 minutes into this shit show.
And God tells Abraham that you embody that pattern by pursuing the spirit of adventure. So that's cool. That's cool. And then there's one last thing. He says, you'll do all 3 of those things in a way that'll be a benefit to everyone else. And so then you think, you think about this biologically even. So you see this in your kids. They have this impetus to master the world, right? And now you want to watch that, and you want to...
You know, that guy was summoned by the fact that we're damaging our like cerebral cortexes, right? You guys know that dumbass was summoned by this dumbassery, right?
Encourage that, and you do that by establishing a relationship that's separate, because I'm sure your boys are quite different.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, because children differ a lot from one another. So you have to establish a different relationship with each of them. But there's commonality in the relationship because it's an encouraging relationship if you're a good father. So now, Matt, that you embody that encouraging relationship optimally, well, God's promise to Abraham is that's what makes you the father of nations, I think. That's such a lovely equation because it it makes the case that the same instinct that calls a child out into the world and that underlies the excitement of adventure is the same. It's the same spirit that produces all four of those benefits. And I thought, well, it has to be that way, because how would it possibly be that the spirit that calls us to move out in the world wouldn't also confer maximum social and reproductive benefit?
It's literally everything. I mean, you're
Jordan's aware that nations exist that wouldn't trace themselves back to Abraham, right? Just genuinely questioning that, because I don't know if he would accept that argument.
basically saying everything, right? Like, if you do what you are supposed to do,
then everything comes to
you will order the world. I can tell you
that what are you supposed to do? What, like, follow your inclination? Stumble across this ancient story and assume it's true for some reason?
that from being on tour with you and watching the people that you turned around, literally in tears, hundreds of people out of thousands, sometimes in tears at once, because they were off drugs or because they were in a better relationship or they mended a relationship. Do you remember when we went to, when we were in Dublin and it was like 10 different countries in 15 nights, something crazy. You did press all day long. It was an exhausting.
Yo, Jammers CZ, thank you for the 5 memberships over on YouTube. Appreciate that. Alexa Crab, thank you for the $5 dono. Let's go, chat.
Day, and we end the show, and it was a sort of very small,
good night, PC
old school theater in Dublin, and we end up in the alley after, because you don't walk out the front, you know, to where everybody's going to mob you. And it was about 1 a.m. and we walk out, and it's a dark alley, and we had no security. It was just me, you, Tammy, and John, the tour manager. And there were 2 guys about 40 yards away from us, and we could sort of see them, and it almost seemed like they were fighting or something. And they started kind of rushing towards us, and we all thought for a second that they were, going to jump us or something. And then as they got closer, we saw they were both in tears. One guy was probably about late 50s, and one guy was probably early 20s. And they told us that it was a father and son who had had a falling out about 8 years before, had not spoke in 8 years, independently went to the show alone, saw each other there, and made amends. I mean, I just got chills up my spine telling you the story again. Like, what's the point of that? The point is that...
What's the point of that? I need to think of a point for bringing up this story.
If you order your...
Yeah, all these donos, no speed change. I know, you guys need to specify if you want the speed change.
Self that you will order the world. That's real. There's a line that I've been reading from Carl Jung, who I know had a little influence on you over the years, that I've been ending a lot of my shows with lately.
Oh God, please, if you're an up and coming, like, conservative go-getter, please stop reading Carl Jung. He wasn't good at any of the things he did. His ideas were nonsense. Great for fiction books. Terrible for any kind of application to, like, psychology or anything like that. Like, it's fun ideas to play around with in, like, video games or novels. Not actually applicable to psychology. There is no collective unconscious.
I'm going to slightly butcher the exact quote, but in essence, that if you don't...
Yeah, Jammer CZ, if you want things to speed up or slow down, just say the word.
Do the call for adventure. If you don't go on the call for adventure, the exact thing you're asking for, you will be left with nothing but neurosis. Life will...
Yeah, Carl Jung is more of like a hippie... I would say Carl Jung is the equivalent of woo, okay? He's woo-woo spirituality before you had crystal mommies.
The walls will basically close in on you. And we all know this.
Jammer CZ, it's up to you.
Think of all the interesting
Yeah, that's all that's left is the suffering.
Right, because
the pointless suffering.
Think of all the interesting, cool people that you and I have had the privilege of being around in these last 8 years since we met 8 years ago this month, actually.
Right.
It's
you said it's been 8 years.
It's been 8. I think it was 8 years ago this week. It was November. It was the second week of November in 2016.
For a second, I thought you meant Brianna. Well, stop paying attention to her. The sooner we all stop paying attention to that woman, the better.
I had just moved into a new house. We were building my home studio in the garage. I didn't even have internet. I was stealing internet from my neighbor. We did this. You were just on the scene because of the free speech bill.
Like a month.
And suddenly my Twitter feed was.
Oh, damn. We have a villain for the stream. Jammer CZ putting 5 subs towards slow.
Blowing up. You got to talk to this guy, Jordan Peterson. We jump on a Skype. People can find this online. We jump on the Skype. It's very, sketchy in and out. The picture's no good. It's all pixelated. And you're in your office and I'm sitting in my house and we're talking. You're doing the Peter Pan story and everything. And it ends. And I turned to David. I swear on my life. And I said to him, that guy is either the most brilliant person I've ever talked to or completely insane.
Gee whiz, I wonder which answer it is. I wonder which answer best describes Jordan Peterson. Could it be? I don't know. Which one? It's a real toss-up.
I leave it to you to decide.
Yeah,
I guess I leave it to the
discussion about that.
But right, exactly. But
as Christmas approaches, there's a beautiful opportunity to keep God at the center of the season through Hallow, the #1 prayer app. They're launching a special Advent prayer challenge called For God So Loved the World that promises to be a transformative spiritual journey. This challenge features an incredible lineup of guides. Survivalist Bear Grylls and Jonathan Rumi from The Chosen will lead you through a severe mercy, a powerful story of faith and divine love. You'll join Pastor Francis Chan and Jeff Cavins for profound scripture reflections, while actor Kevin James explores the spiritual classic Divine Intimacy.
I'm sorry. What? Yeah. I'm sorry. Kevin James can lead me in prayer? Paul Blart can lead me in prayer? Finally! Finally, my dreams! Finally, he's here! He is risen! The King of Queens will lead us into the kingdom of Christ. Oh my god! Holy shit, dude! Oh my god. Oh my god, I am not prepared. It's too soon, my lord.
The experience is enriched with beautiful Advent music from award-winning artists including Gwen Stefani, Lauren Daigle, and Matt Maher. It's more than just daily prayer. It's
Man, Gwen Stefani is really a disappointment.
Invitation to experience God's love, mercy, and healing in a deeper way. Don't wait. Get 3 months of Hallow free at hallow.com/Jordan. Make this a time of putting God at the center and experience the good that comes from it. That's hallow.com/Jordan for 3 months free.
Flash forward 8 years.
That was one of the craziest ad reads I've ever seen in my life. This prayer is bananas. B-A-N-A-N-A-S. This prayer is bananas. B-A-N-A-N-A-S. Yo, comrade girl, let's go.
Speed it up.
Let's go. Now we're tied. 5 subs to speed, 5 subs to slow. I ain't no hollaback god. No, I ain't no hollaback god. Which, you know, to be fair, he's not. It's been a lot of radio silence. We're getting ghosted. We're getting holy ghosted.
we've both been on adventures that have kind of collided at times and then gone separately at times, good, bad, all sort of health things, all the kids, all the stuff. And yet I think that we're probably both sitting here as good as we've ever been. That's a sort of scary, I don't like saying it in some sense, like, because then it feels like it's inviting doom or something. But I think it's only because I've seen that when you do what you're supposed to do, when you really do it, and you say something true, even just connected to the political world of the last couple of years, like, I think we had a little something to do with getting people to wake up to what was going on in the world. You know, you did it at the sort of psychological, personal front. I kind of did it on the political front. And we have an unbelievably hopeful world coming right now, I think.
So in the Cain and Abel story, Cain makes second-rate.
I do really now that I know that Paul Blart is tangentially connected with the Jordan Peterson project, I do really want Paul Blart to come and do a sit down with Jordan Peterson. I want that more than anything. I don't want Kevin James to sit down with Jordan Peterson. I want Kevin James in character as Paul Blart to come and sit down with Jordan Peterson. I just think that has the potential to be very funny. Damien N.
For the love of lobsters, speed it up.
With the $10 New Zealand, just real quick. Okay. I did the conversion. 10 New Zealand dollars is roughly $5 US. So I will speed it up. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you very much, Damien. Warrior from down under.
Sacrifices, right? So he doesn't bring his best to the table. And in consequence, he fails. This is one of these situations where...
Oh, shut up. New Zealand's great. New Zealand's greater than you'll ever be.
The meaning of the pattern of human life is being acted out by people who can't propositionalize it yet, who can't conceptualize it explicitly. So they're acting it out. And so human beings discovered at some point that they could sacrifice the present for the future and themselves for the community, and that actually worked better as a medium to long-term strategy. So that's why the community is based on sacrifice. And you made reference to that with regard to the impulse that entered your imagination when you were taking your son to the hospital, that realization that there's something more important, well, than you, even in total in a way, but certainly than what you might merely want at the moment, right? And so Cain, who's kind of Luciferian and he thinks he can get away with his tricks, he doesn't bring his best to the table and he fails. And so he could notice that and rectify his fault and confess and atone and fly right and succeed. That's on the table. But instead, he becomes bitter and he shakes his fist at God.
Well, the obsession conservatives and moderate libs have with sacrifice. I would say this is largely true of like conservative, fascist types. The reason they are obsessed with sacrifice is because they want to inculcate kind of this belief in the goodness of sacrificing oneself into their base. Largely because, again, fascism is a death cult. You want to have people who are willing to throw themselves into the wood chipper on your behalf.
And so his presumption fundamentally is that the fact of his failure is emblematic of the dysfunction of the world. It's not him, even though he's not bringing his best to the table. It's the structure of reality itself. So it's unbelievably arrogant, right? So that's the...
I mean, I would argue, Nomi Sunrider, I would argue that Jordan Peterson is kind of a new age prosperity gospel preacher. You know, like, he's not exactly Christian, and he's not exactly prosperity gospeler, but there's a lot of parallels in a lot of, like, the mechanics of how the two work, you know? You tell the success stories, you downplay or ignore the failures, and you just keep rising up, promising your flock ever more rewards for their faithful support of you, you know?
The Luciferian element. Unbelievably intellectually arrogant. It's not me.
What wouldn't you do to the world if you believe that?
He claims he's not a Christian. He claims he's not a Christian, but he also claims he is a Christian. It's one of those things where, like, if you dig down to it, and I've watched some conversations he's had on Christianity and such, and I'm not going to put you guys through that ever, because they're extraordinarily long and convoluted conversations. But essentially, his position seems to boil down to, like, he believes in the Bible from a certain point of view, and that point of view is he believes in it as a powerful story that taps into a fundamental human truth, and that truth is real. And so in that sense, the Bible is real, and the Bible reflects that truth, and therefore the Bible is real and true in that sense. But he then dances around a lot of, like, the direct spiritual questions in the narrative. It's just so... He's very weaselly about it in a way that is deliberately designed to trick Christians into believing that he is also a Christian, you know? He also argues that dragons are real for the same reasons. True.
What wouldn't you do?
Yeah, you'd burn it to the ground. Well, that's basically what happens in the story as it unfolds. So he shakes his fist at God, and then he has a conversation with God. And God says, he says, you think that you're suffering because you're not doing well, and that's a consequence of your misery. First of all, if you did well, you would be accepted. So that's a very interesting claim. The idea is that if you gave it everything you had, it would work. And you can imagine that that's a kind of faith, right? That you have to have faith to do that. Mm-hmm. Because there's no evidence to begin with that if you brought your best to the table, it would work. And, you know, maybe you've had experiences where people betrayed you and so forth that made you doubtful, or you betrayed yourself. So it is emblematic of faith to bring your best to the table. God's rejoinder to Cain is that if you brought your best to the table, you would succeed. Now, you can imagine people being skeptical about that, but I think the right response to the skeptics is, have you brought your best to the table?
What's the other option?
That's what's explored.
Right. Good contribution to the conversation, Dave. I knew you had it in you.
So
what other option could there be other than bringing your best to the table? Well, you know, literally any of the other ones. Do these idiots ever actually say anything of substance? I genuinely don't know if anything of substance is going to be discussed in this entire video. I'm just doing what chat told me to do.
And then God says something even stranger to Cain. He said...
But I do want to really emphasize that one of the values in us watching this is to really emphasize that they are not saying anything. Or, at the very least, the things they are saying can be boiled down to, like, 1 or 2 sentences when they're using 20 to say the equivalent, you know? And I think a lot of people would benefit from being able to know how empty this is. Because a lot of you guys know that. But a lot of the people who watch Jordan Peterson or Dave Rubin have no idea how vacuous this content is.
There's something like, you're also blaming your suffering on your failure, but that's not exactly right. And this is very interesting causally, because we like to think that, you know, people who go crooked, let's say, do that because they've been hurt, because terrible things have happened to them. And there's an intervening variable theory in this account between Cain and Abel. So what God tells Cain is that
there's an intervening variable theory in this account. Is there?
There were many ways that he could have reacted to the fact of his own failure, and he picked one. And the one he picked was rife with a terrible temptation. He says, sin crouches at your door like a sexually aroused predatory animal, and you let it in to have its way with you.
What? I'm sorry, I've read the Bible before. I don't recall... I don't recall there being a part where... I'm sorry.
Like a sexually aroused with... And he picked... There were many ways that he could have reacted to the fact of his own failure. And he picked one. And the one he picked was...
Okay, I'm sorry. We're going to have to do a little Bible study because I don't recall this. Bible Gateway. Let's just take a look here. We'll look at the... I want the... We'll use the NIV. Genesis. All right. Full chapter. Let's see. Okay. All right. Chapter 2. Adam and Eve. Cool. Fall. Cain and Abel. We're on Genesis 4. Okay, Adam made love to his wife Eve. She became pregnant, gave birth to Cain. She said, with the help of the Lord, I have brought forth a man. Later, she gave birth to his brother Abel. Now Abel kept the flocks, Cain worked the soil. In the course of time, Cain brought some of the fruits of the soil as an offering to the Lord. And Abel brought an offering, fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock. The Lord looked with favor on Abel and his offering, but Cain and his offering he did not look on with favor. So Cain was very angry, and his face was downcast. Then the Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it. You know, let's take a look. Let's take a look at the New King James. Let's take a look at the New King James Version. Okay, maybe this has a bit of a different thing. Okay, if you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin lies at the door, and its desire is for you, but you should rule over it. I don't know what version of the Bible...
Cain slays Abel. Cain is cursed by God. Cain meets Lilith. Cain spurns Lilith. Vampire the Masquerade taught it cooler. From Caracal.
True. Okay, but I do have to say, nowhere in either of these... You know what? I'm going to look at one more. Maybe we just missed the one with bestiality. Let's see. Let's just look at the old King James Version. All right. If thou doest well, shalt thou not be accepted? And if thou dost not well, sin lieth at the door. And unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him. Again, not about a predatory animal wanting to fuck you. And then you wanting it? Question mark? I feel like Jordan Peterson is reading what he wants to read in here. And I feel like that says way more about Jordan Peterson than it says about anything else in this equation. Yeah, desire is not always sexual.
Rife with a terrible temptation. He says, sin crouches at your door like a sexually aroused predatory animal.
That is not how that goes.
And you let it in to have its way with you. And so the idea there is that Cain is turning to vengeful bitterness in consequence of his failure when that wasn't the only option. And so he's inviting the spirit of...
I mean, William Lane Craig is at least well-versed in the Bible. You know, like Jordan Peterson will just like do the craziest readings imaginable. William Lane Craig at least has like an ideology that is, as far as I know, like rooted in some kind of idea of what he's talking about.
Vengeful bitterness to possess him.
Like don't get me wrong. I'm not saying William Lane Craig is correct. I'm just saying like, at least William Lane Craig will be like, yes, I believe in divine command theory. And that's why I think genocide in the Bible is okay, because God commanded it. And that's a special exemption. Like William Lane Craig will at least be honest about his positions. Jordan B. Peterson just makes up wild horse shit. Constantly.
And then he's actually to have its way with him. And he's actually entering into a creative union with that. And that's the cause of his misery. And that's the end of the discussion. And that enrages Cain. And that's when he invites Abel to go work with him. So it's a false invitation. And then he kills him. And then Cain's children become more and more murderous, and his grandchildren make weapons of war. And the next story is the flood or the Tower of Babel, right? So it's a complete story of human degeneration. And it's a covenantal account too, because Cain violates the covenant with God by not bringing everything he has to bear on the situation. And think, well, what's the counter proposition to that? Is that the counter proposition is that you can succeed by hedging your bets. Well, who would believe that? Like when you lay it out bluntly,
right, you might just get away with it. Something
well,
like
that's
right.
the hope.
Right.
Well, but then underneath that, there's obviously the idea that you're smart enough to pull the wool over what? Your eyes,
God's
everyone else's,
eyes,
God's eyes,
yeah.
everyone's eyes. That's who you are, eh? Or worse, that's the spirit that you've invited to possess you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, just real quick.
It's a false invitation, and that's the end of the discussion. That's the cause of his misery. And that's the end of the discussion. And that enrages Cain, and that's when he invites Abel to go work with him. So it's a false invitation. And then he kills him.
Yeah, another way of saying that is he tricks Abel into the field and murders him, yes.
And then Cain's children become more and more murderous, and his grandchildren make weapons of war. And the next story is the flood or the Tower of Babel, right? So it's a complete story of human degeneration.
No, this is where you get the mark of Cain, where Cain is cursed to wander. And, like, then he, like, his children go off. This is not the story of human degeneration, which, by the way, if you actually believe what Jordan Peterson is saying, just understand that that was one of the bases of slavery. White plantation owners literally defended the institution of slavery by arguing that black people or darker-skinned people were descendants of Cain, and that the black skin was, in fact, the mark of Cain talked about in the Bible. And therefore, it was right and just for white people, the true and proper undegenerated descendants of Abel, to rule over them. Jordan Peterson is doing plantation slavery apologetics here. Wait, do you have enough semesters of American history to discuss this? Indeed.
And it's a covenantal account too, because Cain violates the covenant with God by not bringing everything he has to bear on the situation. And think, well, what's the counter proposition to that? Is that the counter proposition is that you can succeed by hedging your bets. Well, who would believe that? Like when you lay it out.
Honestly, Dylan, I would recommend reading the Bible. Especially because I don't think there's really any danger of a non-religious person reading the Bible and then like being like, wowee, this is true. You know, I don't think that, like, I think you have about as much chance of doing that as reading, like, I don't know, what's a badass series, Mistborn, and being like, yes, this is a true and accurate history of Earth. There we go. Nailed it. But it is, unfortunately, a common cultural touchstone that will make a lot of things that other people say and do that you will encounter make a lot more sense.
Right, you might just get away with it, something
well,
like
that's
right.
the hope.
Right.
Well, but then underneath that, there's obviously the idea that you're smart enough to pull the wool over what? Your eyes,
God's
everyone else's,
eyes.
God's eyes,
Yeah.
everyone's eyes. That's who you are, eh? Or worse, that's the spirit that you've invited to possess you. Right, and then when it reveals itself completely, it turns out to be fratricidal and then genocide.
That's probably how most of us operate on a day-to-day basis, right? I mean, the most people probably operate on some version of pulling the wool over their eyes, right? Right.
Yeah, well,
Like,
that's certainly.
I'm
the
not talking
psychoanalytic
about
claim.
the most exceptional people. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not talking about like that.
Well, that's
level.
the question of conscience for everyone.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, well, if things aren't going your way, just whose fault is that? Well, the other thing you might want to realize too is that if you're lucky, it's your fault, because you can do something about that. If it's the state of the world, let's say, or if it's God's distaste for you at some fundamental level, let's say, or the impossibility of existence in general, then you're really in hell. But if it's you, well, then you could possibly do something about it if you were
might
willing
wanna
to.
Maybe clean your room, perhaps.
Well, maybe,
Wouldn't that be something to do?
Maybe. Well, you could
Yeah.
start by straightening out what you can straighten out. Well, and you said, you know, you saw on the tour repeatedly the fact that that worked for so many people. And so, you know, and that's part of the reason why we've kept this going. Well, it's the reason that we've kept it going. You know, it's extremely interesting and it's great to have the opportunity to think on my feet.
Well, it's your adventure.
Yeah, right.
It's your adventure. I saw it then, and I know, even though we're not on tour together right now, I know you're still doing it.
You know,
You're
I
still
had
doing it.
forgotten that you were, I wonder if you were the first relatively large podcaster to talk to me after everything blew up in Canada. It might have been, you know, because like I made those videos on Bill C-16 in about mid-October in 2016. And so
Man, it's so crazy that, you know, he's 8 years on from this, and he's still talking about trans people and like how this was his defining moment. And his defining moment was, to be clear, the reason that he's famous is because he would not gender trans students properly. And he spoke out against a bill saying that it would send him to prison for misgendering students. And that was 8 years ago. And I don't believe anyone has gone to jail because of that. Weird. Really, really weird. Defining moment of his life, complaining about something that hasn't happened and won't happen.
it was, and what was happening in your career at that point? Like, you were established on YouTube already as a commentator. Now, at that point,
I had left the left, so to speak. You know, I was still fighting for the same liberal values that I actually still believe in. I just can't use the word liberal anymore. We can get into that if you want. It's just it just becomes impossible linguistically to explain why liberal values are no longer so.
Oh yeah, it's just too impossible to explain. It's impossible to explain, chat. You know, to a very conservative audience, why he would call himself a liberal. It's almost like you're not a liberal anymore.
Associated with the liberals, which we both obviously talked a lot about, but I was really
Good night,
independent
Jammer
for the first time at that point. I had just bought my first house. We were doing the home studio thing. Really, nobody had done that. You know, I really was at the front end of building a.
Plenty of people had done that by that point, Dave. Good God, you weren't the first person to build a studio in your house.
TV-ready studio. I mean, you came to that house many times, and we did a lot of great shows there. And I was building something that could have just as easily been replicated in Fox or CNN or elsewhere. We turned a bedroom into a control room. We had a proper lighting grid. We did it. All the right equipment, right staff, etc.
Yeah, right.
But the main thing that I was still harping on politically was free speech, because I saw the hysteria of the left. And then I started looking at Twitter, and Twitter obviously was very different at the time, but
Twitter and social media have cooked so many brains. It's honestly crazy. Get on Blue Sky. It is a bit better than Twitter. Also stop believing that Twitter is the entire world. It's not. Social media is not the entire world. Put down your phone, go take a walk. There are plenty of people outside in your community that you can bond with. Twitter and social media will still be there when you get back. And go take a walk. Immerse yourself in your local community. And hey, maybe even start working on a project to make a part of your community better. It will genuinely do wonders. It was really, really cool seeing that queer all ages center open up near me. It was really, really cool.
You know what it was like. You'd tweet something, and then you'd look at the mentions, and suddenly everybody's going on and on about this guy, Jordan Peterson. I thought, well, let's talk to this guy, Jordan Peterson, and my studio is not ready, and he's up in Canada, so we'll jump on Skype and do it. I think it might have actually been my first Skype interview ever, you know, and then during COVID, that obviously became kind of ubiquitous. But from that point, I think I just went in on the free speech thing. It was, well, I knew it was right, but it also felt it felt deeply important. And now,
why did you decide to come on tour with me? Because that was pretty soon afterwards, right?
You may not remember how it happened, but it almost was a joke. And this says a lot. This says a lot about you, actually. When you, me, and Ben Shapiro did a show at my house.
Yeah.
In January, I believe. It was 2/18.
Yeah.
It was January 2018. The three of us did the show, and you were doing your first theater show that night at the Orpheum in LA.
Okay.
And we did like a 3-hour show, the three of us. And I knew you and Ben could just do this all day long. I barely had to be there. I just had to, kind of look one way every now and again. But I knew you had this big theater show, so I wanted to end it a little bit early. We ended up going about 3 hours. And then as we were saying goodbye, and we had only met in person, I don't know, 3 times, maybe that was the second time we met, I'm not even sure. I said to you, and I was kind of joking, as you were standing on the stoop of my house, leaving to go to the theater, I said to you, hey, Jordan, do you want me to come tonight and I'll crack a couple jokes about lobsters and some of the other funny references? And you said, yeah, that would be a great idea. And then I came, the Orpheum was sold out. It was the most people I had ever, I'd been doing stand-up for years, but I had never done a 5,000-seat theater. And I guess I crushed it, and the whole CAA team was right there. And I remember the 2 agents came right up to me. They said, this show is amazing. We're going to take this on tour. You want to open for him? I said, well, we should probably ask Jordan. And then you immediately said yes. And then it completely changed my life. I look back on it like it was a dream.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I really think back, I'm like, did we really do that thing, it was incredible.
Well, even that renting that damn theater, you know, so.
Because you had no idea. And do you remember? Do you remember one of the things that I would always say when?
Oh yeah, Dave Rubin is a comedian, guys. Did you forget? Did you forget? Did you forget? I have never forgotten. I have never forgotten.
There you go. Yeah, the memes are great. That's the thing. Look, I am not for white supremacy or neo-Nazism, but the alt-right as a shit-posting, fun, call out the bullshit, mock the power thing is amazing, actually. There's nothing funny coming out on the left.
The alt-right is amazing and very funny.
Anymore. The left is a bunch of, have you watched any of these comedy shows? They're a bunch of preachy little bitches right now. The left is crumbling because look at all your favorite comics and writers and whatever on Twitter. Are any of them funny anymore? They're not funny. You know where the funny stuff's coming? It's coming out of the alt-right. That doesn't mean I'm a Nazi.
You're all looking at me like, okay, we're ready for comedy. We're gonna do some comedic things. All right. We have a tremendous show for you. We got gays, we got lesbians, we got straights. Right up front, they put the straight person up front. Why would you put a straight person? I demanded the straight people be in the back.
How many of you would say that you're conservatives? By a round of applause. How many conservatives? Conservatives always very respectful. You first raise your hand before you applaud. Conservative. We don't make a lot of noise. Conservative, we're conserving the applause. Conservatives, that's good. Look, that's great. You know, people with jobs and families. You know, you're dressed right. I saw you. I could have picked you all out. It's very easy. Oh, well, there's someone who's wearing clothes that fit, probably a conservative. All gay people. Is everyone here gay? You're gay. Very good, very good. Do we have any bisexuals? I know they don't really get out much, but any no bisexual? No one wants to fess up to that. That was the worst you just went like this.
Nobody wants to admit to being a bisexual. What a good joke. Hilarious comedy from stand-up comedian Dave Rubin.
I should tell you I'm gay. We're at a gay show. So is everyone out? Are you all out? Do we have any closet cases here? Because I like to help the young gay people. Do we have anyone want to admit it right now? I know you. You're not out. You're a hoe. Do we have anyone back there? I feel like there's got to be someone hiding in the back. Who here has gay people in their family? Let's see. Everyone. Do we have some lesbians? I sense lesbians in the crowd tonight. Do we have any black lesbians here?
Okay, this is an almost 10-minute long compilation. I cannot watch all of it. It hurts too much.
At the top of the show. And I tried to switch it up as much as possible. Definitely not as much as you, because I felt my job was to be funny so that people would come and feel relaxed for the first 10 or 15 minutes. Then Jordan could do his thing, and then I would try to be silly with you for the most part at the end. That way it felt like a complete show. That was what I always felt, because otherwise people were coming for hardcore stuff. I mean, unbelievably impactful stuff. And I didn't want them leaving with that. I wanted them to walk out of there like, wow, we had a great time, and tell their friends. So I always felt that was my job. And I think that because we did it that way, I think something that you've told me a few times in the last year or two, that your audience now has matured with you. And I love that. That's the Jacob Blatter story right there, right? You took what was largely young men who had whatever their issues were at the time.
I highly doubt that Dave Rubin ever made money doing stand-up. I want to see receipts from that.
Maybe the way culture was treating them and everything else. You helped order them. They were getting dressed, right? All these guys coming up in suits. We were in Sweden, and I stopped at an H&M in Sweden because I wanted a new suit for that show. And the guy in front of me I hear him talking to the cashier, and he tells the cashier in English, he tells the cashier that he's buying his first suit because he's going to a Jordan Peterson show tonight. And I tapped him on the shoulder. I said, I am too. And then we called him out on the show that night. But now you've said that your audience has matured with you, and now some of them are in better, you know, they're in better relationships. They now have kids. You're talking to people who 5 years ago were a complete disaster. That's literally the story you're telling me right now. It's incredible.
So in the Abrahamic story, so you have the story of Cain and Abel, and it describes the way that the psyche and then the society deteriorates, right? This pattern of insufficient sacrifice, the invitation to the spirit of Luciferian bitterness and resentment, fratricide, and then the decay of society as a whole, right? And then you have the flood, which is the degeneration in the direction of chaos. Then you have the Tower of Babel, which is degeneration into totalitarianism, right? So it's pathology of chaos. It's like degeneration of the individual and society, pathology of chaos, pathology of order. Then you have the story of Abraham, which is the antidote to that. So it's like Abraham is the new Abel. So he decides that he's going to forego his comfort and follow the spirit of adventure. And one of the claims that I've been making in this book, but also on the last tour.
Man, they have spent 45 minutes, and the farthest they have progressed in this conversation is Abraham embraced the spirit of adventure. You could say that one sentence, and it would have encapsulated 99% of everything that they've been talking about. God.
Was that so the divine is characterized in the Old and New Testaments also as the truth that will set you free. And so adventure is part of that, and truth is part of that, and they're reflective of the same unified thing. And I think the reason for that is that there is no better adventure than the truth. And the reason for that, it touches on things we've already discussed, but
that doesn't mean anything. An adventure is a journey that you go on. You go on a journey. That's an adventure. An adventure is not one thing. It's an entire narrative. Truth is a quality. Truth is a quality of something, of a statement, of an idea. This is like holding up a potato and a Rolls Royce and saying, these are the same thing.
I think there's a technical reason for that. It's like
France is bacon, yeah.
If you want something from someone, you can craft your words to get that thing.
Actually, Salmon Moose, that's a way better analogy. France is bacon is great because France is like a social construct. It's like a completely different category of thing from bacon, a physical material thing
you want. And maybe you'll get it, maybe you won't. And you might say that you succeed when you get it. But the problem with that hypothesis is, how do you know that you wanted the right thing?
Also, by the way, it is astounding to me because I've seen Jordan Peterson talk with people who actually like ask him genuine questions about his ideas and stuff. And anytime Jordan Peterson gets cornered, he'll ask, well, what do you mean by truth? What do you mean by adventure? What do you mean by France? What do you mean by bacon? I mean, when you really think about it, bacon can be many things. It can be the words. The words that you utter from your mouth can be that is bacon. You know, the word itself. But then you have the material item, the actual flesh of a pig. that has been stripped, that has been cooked, that is sizzling? Is it the smell? Is it the taste? Wherein lies the baconness? You see, when you really boil it down, bacon is a very complicated thing. And in fact, you need to understand that bacon is also, it holds a place in our society. You know, some cultures value bacon as a dirty commodity, an evil. It can be an example of the other. It can be an example of what is good and noble, and it can be an example of what is evil. And really, when you boil it down, bacon is the spirit of humanity itself, a dichotomy that has been established and grown throughout the ages. Generation upon generation had their own understanding of bacon, and in turn, what bacon is has changed. You know, he does this constantly when he gets into a corner, but notice that in a conversation with Dave where he's just given free rein, at no point in this has he ever defined what truth is or defined most of his terms. He's just been waffling, blood. He's been waffling.